From the moment Mick and Keith met through to U2 as a high school band in Dublin, how did our biggest music legends make the leap? Passion, talent, luck, and even scandal often came together to propel these stars from obscurity to household name. The stories, the journey, the wild behind the scenes, and much more. I'm Dave Anthony, and I'm the host of From Garage to Stadiums. Let's get to, basically Christy and Billy ultimately break up, but there's a couple albums in there. One actually interesting song is from the Stormfront album, 89. And you tell the story of how Billy and Sean Lennon were chatting, and Sean, son of John and Yoko, said, Billy, you were lucky you grew up in the 50s. Life was great. And look what we have today with wars and Middle East and this and that. And Billy said, hey, man, it's always been a pretty dreadful world, which leads to the song We Didn't Start the Fire.
Khrushchev, Joe DiMaggio, Jackie Kennedy, you name it. That was another song. It's probably one of the more frequently played songs in any given set list. And one of those near novelty songs that happens to just be kind of a banger at the same time.
Yeah. And then he goes on, I guess, after, and this, I want to get to the personality of Billy, because another marriage goes bad with Christy, and then he meets Katie Lee, who ultimately becomes she was a college grad. So he was 55, she was 23. She goes on to become a celebrity chef of note, but my goodness, and then he has a third wife, 33-year difference. Now let's get back to Billy's personality, because presumably you talk a lot about his alcohol issues, mental health struggles, I guess is what I'd categorize it under, and then sort of seemingly in these series of marriages. Let's talk about his personality. Like, what it's obviously leads to success, but some of the challenges are pretty interesting too here.
I think fans would be reassured to know that he's fundamentally the nice guy you want him to be, which doesn't really address why the marriages broke up and stuff. But Katie Lee was in New York with some friends, and I think they were in the bar of the Peninsula Hotel there, and Billy was there, and they met. And he said, you want to come by and see a show? The show happened to be Billy's musical, the Twyla Tharp musical, Moving Out. And I think that was one of the rare evenings where he probably jumped on stage, So that's pretty impressive. Then they went out to a fancy dinner, and the flirtation soon evolved into romance. This is just
because she would have been near Billy and Christy's daughter's age, I would think.
Yeah, there's no questioning. As I watched rock stars and movie stars over the years, you're going to date whomever you can date. And there's going to be some what certain people would call age stretching limits, but they weren't really meant for the ages. Billy and Katie Lee, I thought, you're nice. Just like something I'll say about A-Rod, Alexis Roderick.
That's
she's the
the
kind
third.
of person.
That's the. Is that the?
That's
the
his
fourth?
present wife, and of course the mom of these delightful new daughters.
Yeah,
Who
so that's the
joined
fourth.
Alexa
That's the
Ray
fourth
Joel.
wife in the story, I guess.
Say again.
That's the fourth wife in the story, correct?
There you go.
It's interesting how you talked about the overbearing mother Rosalind at the beginning. He ends up with Elizabeth, who's a real tough cookie. He ends up in the hands of Frank Weber, another tough cookie who's almost, I guess, corrupt at some levels. Is Billy just an innocent guy who thinks highly of everyone and doesn't think poorly? Is that how he gets into these situations?
Well, that's an interesting point of departure to address. He's also very canny, and he has a lot of trust. An innocent man is not the wrongest song title for a guy like that. He wants to believe that people are of goodwill. I think it says something. The people around him Brian Ruggles, who does the sound, Steve Cohn, who does the lights, and really is the eminence of set lists and stuff. Uh, Most of the band, there have been replacements of the band over the years, not always done in the kindliest manner. But if you have Billy's trust, you're good to go. So when people betray that trust, it hasn't ruined his perspective on things, you know.
Mhm.
And people like hanging around. I've never seen him yell at somebody, and I was underfoot a lot.
And speaking of still being there, he goes on 2014 to 2024, he does a 10-year residency at Madison Square Garden, grossing
Yeah,
about $2,000,000 a month. Um, just an incredible legacy that this guy has. What do you think, Fred, is his place in music history? What will Billy be remembered for?
he was the soundtrack of my life. Now, being his almost exact contemporary, growing up in New Jersey, yeah, what's coming out of the AM radio, WMCA, WABC, it's a lot of Billy. So we all have our personal Billy moments. I mean, the first doctor I got in LA, they said, "Well, what's your history?" I said, "Oh, I did Billy Joel book." He goes, "Oh, yeah, of course. I got married. That was what we played at my wedding." You
Yeah.
know, I said, "You and what army?"
Yeah.
Everybody had him at their wedding of
Yeah,
a
"Just the
certain
Way You
time.
Are" and all these songs, I mean, they're all played at weddings, my goodness.
Yeah. So it's like saying I trying to rip your DNA out of your cells. Billy, it's all Billy all the time up there in some ways. Um, the songs are hits for a reason. Great melodist, great singing delivery, but Billy being so strategic musically and so informed musically knows how to wring the best out of his voice. And when you see him there at the piano, and as people know and is briefly referenced in the book, it's a simulated piano in certain regards. So he can change a key with a twist of the knob and play in what would have been the old keys. God, what kind of algorithm does this? I don't know. But just musically canny, not to forget the classical music training. I remember
Yeah,
uh,
that's a great point, Fred, he had classical music training.
Sure. And he's not going to hit any clinkers. If he does, he's not going to stop the band and go, "Oh, rock and roll fuck up." Just little moments I had early on, I realized how deep that training was. uh, my wife and I were in Japan when the tour started that encompassed Australia. And he's sitting in this little smoking lounge. Some Mozart comes on. He says, "Yeah, you really hear the chromaticism from that era of Mozart." I thought, "Wow, okay." He's talking the talk. He knows he will whistle a whole Beethoven symphony to himself while he's wandering around, making Italian food. So that deep kind of knowledge, that deep musical knowledge, but also about what works. He's not looking for big guitar solos. His piano playing is fun, but it's always fun tuned to something enjoyable. So I think it's the great, and I say this with respect, the great middle class of rock and pop music. You can't get around him. I was interested that Olivia Rodrigo was interviewed by the New York Times, and they said, "You've got your favorites, you're the older artists." She goes, "Billy Joel is everything." So she was then the kind of tailors over there. All those young,
Yeah.
smart songwriter girls are there. But there's a really prized moment for me, and there's a photo of it I snapped in one of Billy's boats. I was down there doing stuff for the book, researching his house in Miami, and we Springsteen drives down, I casually say, and we get into one of those the landing craft boat, which would be an exact boat someone like Billy would get, and with his Captain Gene, we ride across to an Italian restaurant. And to sit there at lunch in the Italian restaurant and watch these two guys talk about their awareness without any braggadocio, their shared awareness, we kind of hit the gong at the right time when FM and touring and growing command of our art, they wouldn't have put it that way, brought us to this visibility and brought us to a kind of a career peak. Uh, and weren't we lucky? and we
Yeah.
all lucky to have them doing that.
You must have done something right when Ray Charles inducts you into the Hall of Fame of
Yeah,
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
and Ray says to him, Billy's out there, Ray finishes his speech, and he says, "I got you, brother. Come on up." Yeah,
Yeah. Hey,
yeah.
Fred, what, 3 songs should the audience give a listen to either get a flavor for Billy Through the Ages or unheard cuts that you think or just some theme that you'd apply to say, "Hey, audience, Billy Joel, here's 3 you should listen to."
Well, I'll give you I'm sure these 3 Rolling Stone asked me when the book came out to do a selection of 10 songs that I really liked. That you heard 2 of them already, and I'm such a cheese ball because I love "Say Goodbye to Hollywood" for the Phil Spector in it, and the way he delivers. And again, if you can say banger about a man of my age and his age, that's a banger. Uh, Longest Time I like. Again, more doo-wop. I'm really showing my age, but uh, I think that's really a sweet song. But the one, if I had one favorite, I suppose it's River of Dreams, which is kind of career capping. We didn't know it when it came out. And that, of course, is from the last album. Famous Last Words was like a late cut on the late album. And River of Dreams, it incorporates these gospel elements that I thought were so smartly arranged. And it's about a songwriter's journey or anybody's journey. It can universalize itself. I just find it emotionally a very touching and evocative song. So
We've, today been speaking with, the author of Billy Joel: The Definitive Biography. Fred, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. We really enjoyed your, giving us the insights on Billy.
well, thank you. I really enjoy your podcast, and you show deep homework. And I'm happy to talk about him because, it became a friendship, really. And maybe if that clouds any critical judgment I might have, he's still that really solid guy. And I'd like that to come through to people.
Right. Well, I think you did a great job of showing both sides of Billy, the challenges, the triumphs, and, really the man behind it all. So, thanks again.
Thank you so much. See you next time.